The woman who had once been my partner, the one who cheated, abandoned our family, and signed away her parental rights years ago, just reappeared in my life, asking for another chance. The audacity! But let me give you some context. Angela, my ex-wife, 36 years old, and I, 37, had met in our mid-twenties. I was 24, and we worked at the same firm. It was a typical office romance, or at least that's how it seemed at first. We dated for 2 years before marrying, and within 3 years of that, we had 2 daughters, now 9 and 7 years old. The second pregnancy, though, was an unexpected bombshell. Angela wasn't happy about it. She'd even considered terminating it, though I told her it was fine if she didn't want to go through with it. I didn't want her to feel burdened by something she didn't want. But she decided to keep the pregnancy. At first, after our first daughter was born, things were still good. We were happy, in love, or so I thought. But after the second pregnancy, everything began to shift. Angela, once vibrant and loving, turned irritable. Moody. She started picking on me, picking on our eldest. I assumed it was hormones, something temporary. I tried to be patient, to understand. I was sure it would pass. It didn't. It got worse. The house felt like a minefield, and my daughter and I, we learned to walk on eggshells around her. It wasn't the marriage I had signed up for. I was doing everything. Every responsibility, every chore. And Angela? She had stopped working after our first child. She became a stay-at-home mom, taking care of our daughter. But after the second pregnancy, she became distant. I didn't know how to help her anymore. She was tired, sure, but wasn't everyone? I still went to work. I still came home, exhausted, and tried to do my part. But when she was pregnant with our second child, things took a turn. She quit everything. The house, the kids, she couldn't handle it. Or maybe she just didn't want to. So, we hired a housekeeper. A compromise. A way to ease her burden. It stretched our budget thin, but I did it because I didn't want to push her, especially while she was pregnant. I thought it would be temporary. Once the baby was born, she'd go back to managing the house, right? Wrong. Months passed. No change. She didn't even attempt to help. She just sat at home, glued to the TV, while the kids played on their own. I'm not proud of how I felt, but I felt resentful. How could I keep working day and night, barely making ends meet, while she did nothing? The housekeeper's salary drained us further, but Angela didn't lift a finger. I was burning out. I needed her help. I needed her to do her part. Finally, after months of this, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to talk to her. I asked my parents to watch the kids for a day. They agreed. That day, I sat Angela down. I knew it was going to be hard, but it had to happen. I told her I understood she was tired, but that I needed her help. I needed her to pitch in. The housekeeper's salary was killing us. I needed her to at least contribute. She looked at me, and in an instant, said no. Her response was immediate and cold. She wasn't going to help, she said. She was too busy looking after the kids. I should earn more, she said, as if that was the solution to everything. I told her that I was doing everything I could. I worked hard. But we both needed to do our best if this marriage was going to work. I brought up how she wasn't really taking care of the kids. She let them watch TV all day. The housekeeper had mentioned it to me, casually. I thought it was a valid point. A mistake. She erupted. Accused me of spying on her. Through the housekeeper, she screamed. The argument escalated quickly. She was angry, accusing me of being the one at fault. She didn't even see the problem. She claimed it was my fault that we couldn't afford the help. She was the victim. I was the problem. I tried to hold my ground, but she kept twisting everything. It didn't matter how much I did. I was always wrong. The fight raged on, and finally, she called me a loser. A failure. Said I couldn't even afford to be with someone like her. I snapped. I called her a lazy cow. I told her she had failed as a mother. I pointed out how scared our eldest daughter was of her. Now, she was failing as a wife, too. The words were harsh. The tension was thick. And then, in an instant, she shoved me. Hard. I lost my balance, fell backward onto the coffee table. The glass shattered, and I felt pain shoot through my back. I had to be rushed to the ER. She cried, apologized. But I couldn't trust her anymore. The physical pain wasn't as bad as the realization. I had to protect my daughters. I told Angela to leave. I didn't trust her around the kids anymore. Not after what happened. Not after seeing how volatile she could be. My parents took the kids. Angela protested, begged me to give her another chance, but I had made up my mind. She would go to her parents. Live with them. She needed help. Therapy. Only when she proved she was capable would she be allowed back. It was the only option I saw left. I told her there was no way I'd let her move back in unless a medical professional deemed her fit. Something was wrong with her, because happy, well-adjusted people don't act that way. I wasn't sure what had happened to the woman I married, but she said she was willing to work on herself, to get better. I didn't want my daughters growing up without their mother, so I made the decision not to divorce her, not just yet, but to give our marriage another shot. We agreed to marriage counseling, even though we were living apart. But even with the counseling, it turned out to be all for nothing. Angela, despite showing initial improvement, ultimately cheated on me. My parents moved in to help me take care of the girls while Angela stayed with her parents. We kept going to marriage counseling. There were moments when it felt like things might get better. For a while, I thought maybe we could actually fix this. And during that time, I stayed in touch with her therapist, who assured me that Angela was suffering from postpartum depression. The anger, the mood swings, it was out of control, but it was a symptom of something bigger. She was working through it. Things were looking up. After 6 months, I even allowed Angela to visit our daughters, but only under my supervision. Slowly, she started to resemble the woman I once knew. I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe we could work it out. But then, she stopped attending the counseling sessions. No warning. No explanation. I tried to reach her. I kept calling, texting, nothing. She was distant. She kept saying she needed space, but I couldn't ignore the fact that something wasn't right. 3 months went by. And then I decided I had to see her. I knew her parents didn't like me. They blamed me for everything, claimed I had driven Angela to the brink of insanity. Angela had told me not to come around while she was living there, that it would just stir up drama. But I ignored that warning. I had to know what was going on. When I arrived at her parents' house, I expected her to be there, but she wasn't. I asked her parents where she was, and they just slammed the door in my face. The coldness in their response made my gut twist. I could feel their satisfaction, the way they relished in this moment, and that's when paranoia started creeping in. I couldn't let it go. I called Angela. Over and over. No answer. So I did something I knew I shouldn't. I snuck around to the backyard. I knew the kitchen door was usually left open. But I didn't even need to go that far. From the corner of my eye, I spotted her. Angela. Sitting on the swing in her parents' yard. She was facing away from me, but as I got closer, my heart sank. There was a man. The man was kissing her. I didn't recognize him. The image of that moment is burned into my mind, like a wound that never healed. It was the worst moment of my life. I wish I could forget it. But I can't. The man pulled back as soon as he saw me. Angela turned around and saw me too. I felt frozen. My body didn't know what to do. I turned, walking back to my car without saying a word. I couldn't. The shock was too much. She caught up to me, grabbed at my arm. She was trying to talk, to explain, but I couldn't hear anything. I shook her off, told her not to touch me. I got in the car, started driving home. When I reached my house, I didn't wait to hear her explanation. I blocked her everywhere, phone, social media, all of it. I wasn't giving her the chance to manipulate me. I called my parents and told them to start looking for a lawyer. I didn't care what she had to say. What I had seen, what I had witnessed, was the final straw. Angela didn't contact me after that. Not until the day we met with the court-appointed mediator for our divorce. By that time, I had turned into a shell of a person. I had shut down emotionally. Everything felt like it was happening to someone else. I had no reaction when I learned that Angela was terminating her parental rights. She didn't want to be with us anymore. She wanted to be with that guy. Let's call him Shaw. Shaw was her childhood friend, and while they had grown apart over the years, they had reconnected when Angela moved back in with her parents. Apparently, she had fallen in love with him. Her parents? They were thrilled. They had always wanted her with Shaw. They were happy that Angela was choosing herself for once, as if she had ever done anything for anyone but herself. The divorce dragged on. Even though she had been unfaithful, she still wanted alimony. She thought she deserved it. But my lawyer fought hard for me. We made sure she walked away with nothing. After all, I had paid for everything. She'd done nothing but sit at home, watching TV. 5 years passed. The divorce was final. Those 5 years were some of the hardest of my life, but I had to stay strong. I had to look after my daughters. They had nobody else. My parents were there for me, supporting me every step of the way. I don't think I could have done it without them. Now, 5 years later, I can see that the divorce, though it felt like the worst thing to happen at the time, was the best thing for me. I don't think I would have been where I am today without it. If it weren't for that one decision to leave Angela, I wouldn't be where I am today. Life has treated me well since then, and I'm in a much better place now, in every way. We've moved into a bigger house, one I can afford now because I earn more and don't have to spend money on anyone but myself and my daughters. My parents live close by, and they visit often. I have friends who truly care about me, and my daughters are happy, so happy, in fact, that it feels like everything I could ever want or need is finally in reach. And I'm thankful for that. I've got everything a man could need. Or, at least, I did. Until Angela showed up again. It was an ordinary day, kids at school, me on the verge of leaving for work, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door, and there she was, Angela. And beside her, a little boy. He couldn't have been older than 3 or 4, and I knew immediately that this had to be her son. I was caught off guard. I could barely process what was happening when she started crying, sobbing, really. She said she was here to apologize, to make things right. She told me she was ready to be a family again, to give our marriage another chance. I stood there, stunned. After everything? After all this time? She was back, standing in front of me, wanting me to just forgive and forget. Like it was up to her, like she had the power to make that choice. It took less than a second for my mind to snap into focus. Without a word, I shut the door in her face. I didn't want anything to do with whatever this was. But before I did, I told her the truth. This is not your family anymore, I said. I stopped being your husband the day you cheated on me with him. I reminded her that the divorce wasn't just some paperwork, it was a legal formality because she had already abandoned us. She had given up her rights to our daughters. She had no right to stand there and call herself part of our family. And with that, I slammed the door. I didn't want her anywhere near my property. I could have cursed her out, told her everything I'd been holding inside for so long. But I stopped myself. The boy. He was still there, too young to understand the chaos unfolding. I didn't want to expose him to any more of it. I could hear her crying outside for a few minutes before it all fell silent. But I didn't go back. I had made my decision. Once I was sure she was gone, I left for work. I tried so hard to shake it off, to not think about what had just happened. Thinking about it would only weaken my resolve, and I couldn't let that happen. I almost succeeded in forgetting about her, in pushing it from my mind. That was, until I got home from work. I walked in the door, and my phone rang. It was my parents. They demanded an explanation. Apparently, Angela had contacted them after I turned her away. She was devastated, they said. They went on to tell me that they had been the ones to give her my new address. They had encouraged her to come see me, to try to fix things. They had been in touch with her for about a month, apparently, helping her prepare for this visit. They believed it was time for me to think about my daughters. They told me that they believed Angela was ready to be a mother again, that she deserved another chance. I was furious. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could they take it upon themselves to forgive her? To make that call without even asking me how I felt? This wasn't their decision. And it could have been disastrous. What if the kids had been home? It was reckless, dangerous even. I let them have it, told them how wrong they were. But they didn't back down. They claimed they had the right to make this decision too, that it was about what was best for the kids. I couldn't believe it. They were my daughters, not theirs. And while I would always be grateful for the support they gave me during the divorce, I drew a line when it came to letting Angela back into my life. We fought. The words we exchanged were harsh, but they didn't seem to care. They told me I was being selfish, that I was out of line for not giving Angela another chance. They told me they had done their homework, that Angela was a different woman now, and she deserved to be a part of my daughters' lives. When I reminded them that she had signed away her parental rights, they snapped back. They said it was insulting to even suggest they would put my daughters at risk, that I was ruining everyone's lives with my stubbornness. A few days have passed now, and I'm still sure I made the right choice. I don't think I was being selfish. I've had time to reflect, to think it all through. And now, after everything that's happened, there's more to the story. About a week has gone by since Angela showed up at my door, and recently, I found out the truth about her relationship with my parents. It's something I'm still trying to process. And it's more disturbing than I ever could have imagined. Turns out, not only had they given her my new address, but they'd been in contact with her all along. All these years, I had cut Angela out of my life, but my parents hadn't. They kept talking to her, believing that one day, she'd come around. They didn't say much, only once a month, but it was enough. Enough to make me feel utterly betrayed. It turns out, after Angela had signed away her rights, things didn't end there. Shah had made her choose between him and her family. He gave her an ultimatum: abandon the kids, give up any connection to them, and start a new life with him. Or stay and fight for custody, but she would have to leave him behind. It was a terrible decision for her, my parents told me. A choice she struggled with. But eventually, she chose Shah. She had chosen Shah. Chosen to start a new life with him, to create a new family with him, instead of sticking by the one she already had. It stung. But what really hurt was hearing the full story from my parents. Apparently, after I filed for divorce, Angela reached out to them. She confided in them about her situation, asking for their help. She wanted to stay connected to our daughters, even though she knew she had signed away her rights. My parents told me that Angela had been backed into a corner, unable to see her children. I had been fighting for full custody with supervised visitation, while Shah had insisted she abandon our daughters altogether. Angela knew that if she fought for custody, she'd likely lose. There were just too many odds stacked against her, including her history of losing control over her temper. The chances of her getting any custody, even partial, were slim. That's when my parents stepped in. They agreed to help her. In private meetings, they listened to her pleas, her desperation to stay involved in the girls' lives. Angela knew the law had already shut her out, but she begged them to act as a bridge. And my parents, with their own sense of guilt weighing on them, decided to take matters into their hands. They allowed Angela to see our daughters, behind my back. I had no idea. I had no clue that my parents were sneaking behind my back, letting Angela meet with the girls. Every time I dropped them off at their house, they invited Angela over. They'd let her spend time with them, pretending it was casual. But my daughters never told me. They kept it a secret, afraid to speak up. My parents knew how to manipulate them. They bribed them with toys and candy, ensuring they stayed silent. Anytime I asked my daughters about their time with their grandparents, they'd talk about playing games with their friends. I always assumed they were talking about my parents' friends, the ones I already knew. But no! That was the cover story my parents had crafted. They had instructed my daughters to refer to Angela as one of their friends, so that if I asked, they wouldn't let anything slip. The truth hit me like a freight train when I finally confronted my daughters. I asked them if they had been meeting their mother behind my back. They broke down, crying, telling me they couldn't tell me. They feared punishment from God if they did. It was clear that Angela and my parents had drilled this idea into them, that telling the truth would have terrible consequences. I felt sick. How could I have been so blind? How could I not have asked about these so-called friends of my parents? It could have been someone else. Someone dangerous. But I never thought to ask. Now, I was putting a stop to it. Enough was enough. I had already spoken to my lawyer. The restraining orders were filed. My daughters and I had talked it through. I told them they would never see their grandparents or their mother again. They seemed okay with it for now, but I knew it would take time for them to process everything. It had been 5 years of manipulation, lies, and secrecy. I knew it would be hard. But we were going to work through it, together. A couple of days passed. The restraining orders were official, and my parents and Angela were served. They were supposed to appear in court soon, but I had no idea how they felt about it. I had blocked them on every platform, cut them out of my life completely. Even my friends were instructed to ignore them in case they tried to reach out. I had upped the security around my home. I was working from home for a while, just to be safe. I spoke to the school, too. I told them about the situation. I didn't want my daughters to miss any school, but I couldn't let them out of my sight. The teachers had been instructed to keep an eye on them, to ensure no one but me could pick them up. I was doing everything I could to keep them safe, knowing that my parents and Angela might try something. So far, everything had been calm, but I wasn't taking any chances. Then came the next update. We got the restraining order for 5 years. Angela, my parents, everyone who had been involved, had to stay away. If they broke it, the consequences would be severe. I'm still taking precautions. The last time I saw them, they looked furious. I don't trust them, not for a second. So, the security measures remain in place. But my daughters and I? We're working through this. We're attending family counseling, and we're making progress. A lot of progress, actually. All I want now is for my daughters to be happy. That's it. So, please, keep sending us your best wishes. We need it more than ever.